What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we're joined by Brendon Kleen from Locked On Suns to discuss Chris Paul's return to the Suns lineup, taking care of business against the opposing conference's formerly number one seeded Philadelphia 76ers. And why isn't Devin Booker getting more credit for the Phoenix Suns' success? But first, a quick message from our friends over at rockauto.com. Because with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's basically impossible for a local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need in a traditional brick-and-mortar storefront. You can save time and money and energy when using rockauto.com. Why choose to spend up to 30, 50, or even 100% more for the exact same parts from a local chain store or car dealership? Here's a quick example. A Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store, whereas it's only $216 from Rock Auto. Best of all, Rock Auto is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are always reliably low for every single customer. They're not going to price gouge you just because you're a DIY person, right? And that's how it should be. Right? You shouldn't get charged more just because you know how to handle a few parts on your car. They have everything you could possibly need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even brand new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to any and all of your auto parts needs. And here's the really important part. When you're checking out at rockauto.com, be sure to write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box, so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Be sure to visit rockauto.com. Joining us now is Brendon Kleen from Locked On Suns. You can follow on Twitter at BrendonKleen14. Brendon, two teams entered as the number one seeds in their respective conferences, but only one left, still being the number one seed between this heavyweight bout from the Philadelphia 76ers and the Phoenix Suns. This was a really entertaining game, a potential finals preview, if you will. And I think if you walk away, you've got to be pretty encouraged if you're a Suns fan.
Absolutely. You see James Harden with his, signature 2 for 11 stat line. You have 40 points for the Sixers in the second half, and vintage Chris Paul, Devin Booker performances. I mean, really just a normal routine Suns win. And look, the Sixers gave them, and nobody has an answer for Joel Embiid, 37 points for him, but the Suns had an answer for just about everything else, and the end result is a double-digit win, which has been the result a lot of nights this year.
Yeah, the Suns now riding a nice 8-game winning streak, continuing their winning ways as they've done pretty much all season. But in this game specifically, you mentioned that giving up 39 points in the first quarter and then holding the 76ers to just 40 total in the second half. I want to give you a chance to highlight and shine a little bit of light on maybe some of the guys who don't get the credit that they deserve for being so versatile on the defensive end. And that is the combination of defenders in Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges, and Torrey Craig. Just watching those guys take turns throughout this game, shutting down James Harden, making life difficult for him, making life difficult for Tyrese Maxey. Just the versatility of those guys, they're kind of what makes the Suns defense tick.
Yeah, I mean, you named all the players. I don't know if he gets enough shine or not. I think he's one of the better coaches in the NBA, but I'll take the opportunity to give a little bit of credit to Monty Williams. What really stood out to me watching the Suns beat the Sixers tonight was something that is there most games, especially big matchups for the Suns, which is that they are able to execute a game plan almost to perfection on very little notice. I mean, they have playoff level game plans for specific players and specific teams that are way more complicated than you'll see most teams try to even bother with. They were doubling Joel Embiid a lot tonight, but only in specific spots. So when he was close to the basket around that square area on either side of the post, they would double him. But then even within that, it was only late in the clock. So they had very specific rules. They went to a zone defense pretty frequently, but also mixed it up pretty randomly, and they were able to just switch that on. And then, of course, like you just mentioned, when it comes to Harden and keeping him in check, they were switching different players onto him. They were going, over screens, under screens. They were playing him physically. They were trying not to foul him. And against great players, against great teams, you just have to mix it up. And so for them to be able to come out and be ready to do that and execute it at such a high level, I think actually, to me, the defensive MVP might be the coaching staff led by Monty Williams tonight more than any one player.
not only the defense in this one, but second game back for Chris Paul after his extended absence. Not like the Suns really missed a beat without Chris Paul, but having him back in the lineup is always a great thing, right?
Absolutely. Plus 25, team high tonight. So you can tell when he's out there, things are still always going to keep going at an extremely high level. And what really stood out, I mean, it shouldn't have necessarily gotten to crunch time, or to clutch time, which is 5 points within the last 5 minutes of a game, but it did, and that's when Chris Paul has really been the head of the snake for this Suns team, and he was again tonight, just getting to the mid-range jumper, getting shots for other players, and it's pretty incredible. The Sixers were obviously, as they do, dropping deep in the pick and roll defense, having Joel Embiid hover around that, free throw line and below type of area, protecting the rim. Chris Paul is happy to take advantage of that, get to that mid-range jumper and nail it more often than not. What's just crazy watching that happen, though, is the injury, like you just mentioned. You'd think that would be hampering him more than it did, considering he's back early. But then on top of that, he's making that jumper in some cases over the outstretched arms of 7 foot plus Joel Embiid. It really does not matter what that defensive look is. If you're going to drop, he's going to take that jumper, and it's most likely going to go in. And the Sixers just didn't have enough of an answer for that. And as we talked about with the defense, the Suns kept them in check, and that's all you need. That's the recipe for a double-digit win.
Been doing it for the better part of the last decade or so. Chris Paul hitting that sweet mid-range jumper. And you mentioned the clutch statistics for this Phoenix Suns team, or just how they performed in clutch moments. This Phoenix Suns team is a ridiculous 31-6 in clutch time games this season. That is an absurd number. The next closest team happens to be the Washington Wizards at 25-15, which I guess that doesn't exactly paint that as like a super like luxurious stat, but when you consider just how dominant the Suns are in the tail end stretches of these games, the combination of Chris Paul and Devin Booker, that tandem duo, to be able to have, maybe one night it's going to be Chris Paul taking the shot or Booker taking the shot. That's the duo that gets it done. And in this, we do have to talk about Devin Booker a little bit here, because just another routine night at the office for Devin Booker, a 35 point outing, 13 of 22 shooting. I want you to fill in the blank here for me, Brendon. Devin Booker is the number blank shooting guard in the NBA.
Well, it has to be him or the guy he was matched up against on the other side of the floor tonight, right? I mean, those are the two premier two guards. I mean, I know positions are somewhat silly in this day and age. I don't know who people consider a two guard versus a forward versus a point guard, but I think it's Booker or it's Harden. And I have a hard time not leaning Booker or how they're playing right now. I just think the consistency, the two-way play, and the, I guess, toughness, the consistency, toughness, those are kind of the same thing. That you just feel like when Booker goes out there lately, especially since the All-Star break, a lot of that was without Chris Paul, and he hasn't lost a beat when Chris Paul has been back the past 2 games. You just feel like you're going to get somebody who's going to, because this is always the thing, right? Great players. There's a ton of very skilled players in the NBA, but I think what really starts to be that leap, that jump, what puts somebody in the upper echelon of NBA players, of basketball players, whatever they might be, is that you are incredibly talented. You can do a ton of things on the floor. You have all the skill in the world, but you also bring it and play hard every single second of every single game. And I'll be honest, I don't think Booker fit into that up until this season, and up until especially, I would say, since about January 1st. And the edge that he brings to this team, combined with all those skills we already know him to have, and he's limited his mistakes this season. He's below a 10% turnover rate when he had never been below, I think, 12 or 13 in his career. So he's just completely limiting how often he's giving the ball up and allowing other teams to take advantage. You put all that together, and I probably lean him. I just think there's a ton of talent at the point guard spot. All NBA is another debate because he's going up against those guys. But if we're just saying who is a two guard in the NBA, it's probably Booker or Harden. And I think track record recently shows you got to lean Booker. I almost Freudian slip, I guess. Booker is my answer.
There we go. And Brendon, just to cap it all off here, is it a little crazy to think that the Suns are going to finish with the best record in the association this year? and have been utterly dominant all season. And yet, no all-star starters. Booker not really in the MVP conversation. Possibly might miss out on first team All NBA depending on where the voters decide to allocate their ballots. I mean, this Suns team doesn't really feel like it gets the recognition that it truly should deserve for being as dominant as they've been this entire year.
I think that the dominance and the level of how far ahead of everybody else that they are has actually hurt them. And I think you see that with past teams, whether it may be the Warriors, although those Steph and KD were very clearly superstar level players before they ever partnered up. So I don't think that they struggled with that same perception. The Spurs before that, we've seen this before. And I think the Suns got a ton of national TV games this year. They obviously get talked about quite a bit. That's not a problem anymore. But I do think we have this thing where when, Ja Morant and the Grizzlies go up against the Warriors with the 2 seed on the line, like, okay, the Grizzlies can jump up, get the 2 seed if they win, or they'll get a lot closer if they can go out and win this game. That feels like more of a moment, right? Than something like the Suns, as we just got done talking about, going out and just beating the socks off of the Sixers in the second half of a pretty meaningful game between 2 top seeds. That feels expected. That feels normal. And so I think that is part of why they have suffered a little bit. I also think we don't, as a national, like just basketball fans outside of Phoenix, I don't know if we feel that attachment to these guys because they just jumped so many levels. We didn't see, the first round exit and then the second round exit, and now they're here. It just happened overnight. And I think that middle ground is often where you see people get awarded. Monty Williams, Coach of the Year, is always the team that improves the most. Well, he didn't get it last year. Does that mean he never gets it again because they'll never have that big improvement again? Or, these other subsidiary awards beneath that? I don't know. I'm obviously rooting for the best team all year to be rewarded, and obviously covering these guys, I want them to be respected and appreciated. But it is very bizarre, and I think winning is all you can do. A title cures a lot of that, but it's strange. I mean, it's been the topic of conversation here. You're saying he's not in the MVP conversation. I think Suns fans might already have their pitchforks out, to be completely honest with you. But I think that they will be well represented. Probably not enough to satisfy Suns fans, and I don't have a great answer for you. I think it's just a little bit of a strange way that we talk about this stuff, and getting very excited about the new and the fresh and the interesting rather than the great, unfortunately.
Well, hey, even if the Suns miss out on some of these, regular season awards, they're focused on the big award, which is that trophy, the Larry O'Brien at the end of it all, trying to make another return to the NBA Finals. And you're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked on Suns. Brendon, always appreciate you stopping by Locked on NBA with me.
Thank you.